Welcome, everybody, to the 20 Volume Effect podcast. I am so excited for our guest today, Mr. Carl Richards. And listeners, Carl, are mainly salon, spa, and medical spa owners. So they may not be familiar with the famous Carl Richards in the financial advisory profession, like the advisors in our world are. But for my salon world people, I would say Carl Richards is almost the Paul Mitchell or the Vidal Sassoon or the Horst of our world. He's really
with no hair, no hair.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Carl has really been a thought leader in our industry and has made a difference in the advisory space where we work hard to do a phrase that Carl has coined as real financial planning. And so it's just an absolute honor to have you here. I'm kind of fangirling a little bit. So thank you.
Thank you for that intro. I'm just honored to have the conversation.
So one of the things that we try to do is to really open up conversations about money and about the salon spa beauty industry. I believe wholeheartedly that the industry is very underserved. And as a result, money is not something that is well spoken of. It's not well spoken of in the world in general, but in the industry, it's something that definitely needs expansion and talking about. So typically our guests are salon owners and they're sharing their success stories, and we're diving into some of those deeper conversations about money.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. So one of the things that I love about you, Carl, is how you really open up these conversations about money. One of the things I would love for you to share with our audience is your idea that money, we think of it as numbers, but so often money really equals feelings.
Yeah, thank you. So I wrote a column for the New York Times for 10 years every week. And one of the things that became really obvious early on was that money's this really weird thing that we kind of expect it to be a math problem. You know, like if you were taught anything about money, you were probably taught something to do with calculators, right? And spreadsheets, and that it was going to be math. And the challenge is that math is always like, it doesn't really matter how you feel about the idea that 2 + 2 = 4. Like, I don't care if you're if you're anxious or worried or excited or greedy or fearful, 2 + 2 always equals 4. And so we kind of bring that approach to money, and then we're like kind of surprised, and maybe your listeners can relate to this, but like you're surprised, like I just opened the American Express bill. Why am I suddenly in a fight? You know, it feels a bit like touching an electric fence that you didn't know was electric. And so I think if we switch that framing a little bit and realize, like, one of the exercises I do a lot with large groups around the country, really around the world at this point, is I'll ask them, and maybe we can do this real quick for all your listeners, like, just for a minute, I'm gonna describe a symbol to you, and I want you to just notice what's the first thought you have and what's the first feeling you have when you see this symbol in your mind, because I'll just describe it to you. So just first thought, first feeling, and then I'll draw in front of you just a dollar sign, the simple US dollar sign. And if you think about the first thought and the first feeling. Now, because we can't interact with everybody, I don't know, but I would imagine, based on doing this now with thousands of people, there were things like anxiety, maybe happy, maybe joy, maybe freedom. Yesterday, I did this with a large group, and yesterday somebody said apathy.
Wow.
You know, like, it just really, but what didn't come up was spreadsheet, calculator, store of value, you know, medium of exchange, all the like technical things. It turns out, like, who let all the feelings in when it comes to money? Money is not math. Money is feelings.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I'm curious, you know, when we talk about the difficulties just of having conversations around money, how much of the feelings part of it do you think ties into having difficulty even talking about it?
Yeah, I think there's two things going on. One, sort of culturally, we've all been taught money, politics, sex, and religion. Now, salon owners, actually, surprisingly, like, this is a great audience to be taught, because every time my wife comes home, the conversation she had, I'm like, wow, that happens like that.
Oh yeah.
I don't have a, it's like, what is it? It's almost cliche at this point, right?
Yes.
So, but most of us had been taught money, politics, sex, and religion are just things we don't talk about in polite company. So you got that problem.
Yep.
Sort of culturally, we were just never taught. Like our parents would have said something like, "Oh, that's none of your business,"
Yes.
if we brought up a money question. But the second thing is when we do go to try it, we're surprised at how triggering it can be personally. Like we can think of something that, you can be having a conversation with your own child and it quickly devolves into something because of something your grandma said to you,
Right.
like, and we haven't unpacked all that because we're shocked by it. And I kind of feel like that's the first step, is realizing like, oh, you know, what was your first memory of money? How do you remember it feeling? Like, what was it like in middle school for you? Were you one of the rich kids or one of the poor kids? And how did you know? Like understanding all of that, then we can start getting to the point of like, I mean, here's an example. I remember my wife came home when I came home from a trip one time and the kids were all in bed and we were just catching up. And one of the first things my wife said to me, just as part of a conversation, was that she's like Lisa remodeled her kitchen and boy, it looks great. And I I just went into story mode.
Mhm.
I started calculating, $96,000 at 7%. Like, and the first thing I said in response to my wife saying Lisa remodeled her kitchen, the first thing I said was, we can't afford that. And she was like, what are you talking about? And I said,
Yeah.
well, you just said you want to remodel the kitchen. She's like, no, I didn't. I said, Lisa wanted to remodel the kitchen. So I just think we so quickly get off into stories.
Yeah.
And if we can learn to be like, oh, that's a story. Wait, let's get back here. What did you mean by that? What, and I could tell you hundreds of stories like that where spouses or partners have been making some really big, reasonable, but big
Yeah.
assumptions, and then found out something different and been like, oh, that wasn't at all what I thought we were talking about.
Absolutely. One of my favorite stories about clients that I was working with very early on, I had, we were having our conversations. I said, so do you guys, do you track your spending? Do you pay attention to your spending? And the wife says, well, I don't pay attention to mine, but I sure as heck pay attention to his. And I just
Right.
thought that was the greatest thing, right? For them to, really come together and realize, wow, we care about what the other one spends it on because it's maybe doesn't align exactly with our values, but, we feel more free to spend our money in a way that we think is important to us. And so, it can lead to so many of those big challenges in having those conversations because we don't want to have to defend our values or be judged for them for that matter.
Yeah. So if you just kind of always remember that the issue is never the issue.
Right.
The presenting problem is almost never what the conversation is really about. If you just kind of remember that, and I've even learned to ask that question, like, oh, it sounds like it's about this. Is that what we're really talking about?
Right.
Just sort of create space for what the issue really is.
And I think that's in all things, even beyond just having the money conversations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you often also talk about then there's a cost to not having these money conversations. And what do you feel that cost of not talking about money really is?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And to be clear, you know, my work, the reason I care, I think making good financial choices requires conversation. Like I just
Absolutely.
like my work at this point is about reducing the global anxiety around money. And the only way I can figure out how to do it is through conversation. And so the book is just I call it a conversation grenade. You sort of toss it. A salon's a great place. Like
Yes,
toss them out there and see what sort of conversations break out. And so the cost of not having them is this continued unconscious, unhealthy behavior with money. I mean, imagine this. Imagine you had a friend and it was your very first friend you met, like the first friend you can remember meeting. And they're still the friend you spend the most time with, the most interactions with. And every time you interact with them, you feel bad about yourself.
Mm.
Right. And that is spending.
Yeah.
the money, right? Like the first interaction you have with money is spending it typically. And it's also the most frequent. Like it may happen 3, 4, 10 times a day.
Yeah.
I mean, on average, it's 15 times a week. And I'm sure that's way low, but that's the last stat I saw. It could be 15 times a day now with
Right.
so if every time you feel bad, like, oh, I blew the budget, oh, you might even feel apathy, like maybe you make enough money that you don't even think about your spending anymore. That's called apathy. That's again not a great way to have a relationship, is to be apathetic to something. So that's the cost of not talking about it, is we continue to have this unhealthy relationship with this thing we call money. It normally manifests itself in the form of a spending transaction, but if we don't start talking about it, what do we really value? Why are we doing this? Why are we spending money this way? Why are we saving? Maybe you're saving way too much,
Right.
right? I know lots of people like that. Like, what is it for? That's the cost. Here's another way to frame the cost is like Stephen Covey said, like, you would never, one of the biggest mistakes in your life would be to spend your whole life climbing a ladder only to figure out it's leaning against the wrong wall. The cost is finding out that you had spent your whole life climbing somebody else's ladder on somebody else's wall.
Right.
That's the cost of not having these conversations.
Yeah. I agree completely. And, one of the other things that I think about in terms of thinking about, money and feelings, one thing that I notice early on in client relationships as we're doing planning is it seems that one thing that people struggle talking about or even really finding out for themselves is what it is that they really want. What are their goals? We ask them that big looming question of, what is your goal? And how much of that do you think ties in with, feelings? Is there, are they afraid to even state a goal because they might not hit it? Or are they just not allowing themselves to really dive deep and think about that? How do you think that ties into the money equals feelings drawing?
Yeah, I think there's another sketch, excuse me, there's another sketch and essay in the book that is just really simple. It just says goals equal guesses. I think one of the challenges with goals is, I mean, there's a couple, but let's talk about at least two. One is there's so much pressure around goal. Like I don't like being asked about my goals because I can feel it right now. I can feel it at the base of my neck between my shoulder blades. Like, because what I say is like, oh, successful people have goals. I read that Harvard study. I'm supposed to have them. How dumb. I don't even have a goal. Like that's the feeling I get. So that's number one, is we don't really like that pressure. We've put too much pressure around goal. And that's why that goal equals guesses sketches in the book is to like lower the pressure. Like it's just a game. Like this is just sort of, I think I want to go that way. Right. And largely even the best financial planners we've all contributed to this, because there's often this like false sense of precision to like really need to define everything. So that's number one. Number two, goals are there's this term mimetic. Like we are so good at just copying other people's goals without knowing it. And that problem has gotten a lot harder because of social media.
For sure.
Man, again, like your audience, what a great place to observe, I mean, as an example, when I was growing up, in the this has probably been late 70s, early 80s, all I knew was we all had dirt bikes. My buddies and I all had dirt bikes. And sometimes I kind of thought I wanted a slightly nicer one.
Mm.
That's like kind of that was the extent of my desire. I didn't know that I was supposed to want a private jet or a villa in Spain.
Right.
I didn't know that. And now I know that because everybody on Instagram and TikTok have told me that I do. So I think that's another problem with goals, is like the question to really start asking is like, what's your goal? And the only way to know that is make a guess and then run some experiments. Like this could be as simple as like what we do on Friday nights. I remember my wife and I for a long time, we had a goal of deeper connection with we kind of like deeper connection with fewer people rather than we have friends that love like, have lots of friends, but we kind of like fewer friends, deeper connection. So we started going to dinner and a movie, inviting other couples to dinner and a movie. And after like 3 times, we were like, well, wait, if the goal is connection, we ended up in a noisy restaurant and then a movie theater. Like we didn't. So we thought, well, what if we invited people over to make dinner? We'll get all the ingredients. We'll make dinner. It'll be it could be a 2 or 3 hour thing. We'll make dinner. We'll eat dinner. We'll sit around the fire, whatever. It turned out it was cheaper, but that wasn't even really the point. The point was, I think we have a goal of deeper connection. Let's test some things. I think I want to retire with 5 million in a sailboat. Okay, well, good idea to go sailing first. Like we get sort of, so don't feel so much preciousness around the goal. Have a hunch and then go see. But like, it'd be fascinating for your audience to just sort of listen to like it'd be so fun to ask questions in a salon. Like, somebody says like, oh, I really want to do that. The question I would ask, you can do this without getting up in anybody's face. You can just say, oh, that's so interesting. When did you first come up with that? When did you first learn that? Where did that come from? Is that something your family did? Like just to sort of understand like what's underneath because I've had so many people say like, gosh, it turns out I don't, who was it? Oh, last story. Somebody just told me this story on 50 Fires. It was, I can't remember what episode of 50 Fires it was. She was at an event in New York. She was an author. And somebody came up to her and said, oh, it's Gretchen Rubin.
Yeah, I was just going to say. Yep.
Yeah, she said like, her friend came up to her and said, do you ski? And Gretchen was like, no, I don't ski. And my husband doesn't ski. We don't like skiing. He's like, you've got to ski. And told her like for 5 minutes, like all the reasons she has to learn to ski. And Gretchen was like, we don't like skiing. We're not going to ski. Half an hour later, that woman came back and said, you know what? I don't like skiing either. Like I just realized I don't like skiing either. I've just always gone.
Yeah.
How many of us are doing those things?
Absolutely. Right? It's absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Sometimes I even think to try and distill down even when people say, okay, well, I've got this goal. I want this car or I want this new house. And I even think so much of that is it's not necessarily the thing that they're going for, right? It's the feeling that they perceive that thing is going to bring for them. And are there ways you can have that feeling that you think the thing is going to get you? I mean, how many times, we've bought something to think, oh yeah, this is going to be the greatest thing. It's going to make me feel so good. And then, 3 days later, you never pick the darn thing up again because it was the feeling you were going for. And it served a purpose for a really small amount of time, but that's it.
That's exactly right. That's really, really insightful. Like, meaning to take that at like a broad swipe at that. It's like, nobody actually wants more money. What you actually want is the thing you think more money will get you.
Correct.
And I even think those things are like, if we really get down to it, like it's things like happiness and joy and connection and relationships. And then you can back all the way around and say, okay, well, wait, is there a more efficient way to get happiness, joy, relationships, connection than earning more? Well, it turns out maybe like going on a walk to the mailbox each evening with my wife holding hands.
Yeah, correct.
Turns out that doesn't cost anything. And I guarantee you 10 years from now, it'll be one of the most valuable things I've ever done in my life.
That's the truth. That is the truth.
So I love that. It's like, so here's the great way to do this is like, as soon as you feel a desire for something, I really want that. Don't feel bad about it. Don't feel shame or blame. Just be like, oh, what I think is really interesting is it's a pointer. It's a signal. You can say, oh, super interesting. What is it about that I'm actually hoping for?
Absolutely.
I often think of it like, what's the value I'm trying to express with that? Like our dinner and a movie. Well, it wasn't dinner and a movie. The value was connection. For some people, dinner and a movie could be entertainment I like to unplug. Gosh, I don't know that there's a better way to do that than dinner and a movie.
Right.
But if it's connection and friendship, that might not be the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can't know that if we just judge around what other people find value in.
This is right.
Yeah. We're just chasing somebody else's goals, somebody else's dreams.
Right.
And the cost of that is losing the time in our life that we really want to develop those things.
Totally. Like, yeah. And I think your point is really well taken. Like, go do it and see.
Right.
Just think of it as a series of playful experiments.
Yeah.
Not shame or blame. It's not heavy. It's just like, and then like celebrate when you learn that it was quote unquote wrong. Like, oh, when we learned that movies and dinner were quote unquote the wrong way, like we can celebrate that. We don't need to feel bad about it.
Absolutely. And that's one of the greatest gifts in life is, the decisions that we have availability to are really endless, right? So
For sure.
as long as we
Sure.
don't spend the time beating ourselves up about the choice that we made and we haul that along with us for the rest of our life, just make a new one, learn, move on, and enjoy
Totally.
life.
One thing that I always love, like if you made a batch of cookies and you accidentally put salt in instead of sugar, like you don't have to eat them. Like make a new batch,
For sure.
right? Like I love that idea of like if I take my family skiing and I buy a day pass, which are like, let's say I buy we're going for the weekend. I buy 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And by day two, everybody's worn out and miserable and it's like raining. The weather's terrible on Sunday. We don't have to go like just so that that's a sunk cost problem, right? Like
Yeah.
you can say, just move on, try something different.
Yeah.
Like turns out like, well, darn it, we bought 3 days. You're going to be miserable.
Well, and so let me ask you a question. Is it really a sunk cost because you didn't ski? No, because you still have the time together.
Totally.
And that's really what you were going after anyway. So I think,
Yeah. What if we get hot chocolate and sit by the fire? Should we ski for an hour? Does
right.
anybody feel like it? Okay, let's ski up and have hot chocolate at the lodge at the top and then ski down and call it a day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to eat the cookies with salt.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Make a new decision. Right. No,
Sure.
so beautiful. And I love the point that you make about the opportunities that our listeners have in the salon world to really open up these conversations about money. You said, I don't know how these conversations happen with my wife when she comes home and say, how do you talk about these things? And I would say one piece that happens in the beauty industry that is unique, and there are not a lot of other industries that have the same thing, is we have the opportunity to put our hands on people
Right.
as a service provider, right? Financial advisors,
Right.
I feel
Not
lucky
doing
enough
much
that
of
I get hugs, but I'm not touching them the whole time. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
And people, they come in and they're very vulnerable about, how they feel about how they look and things like that. So it really does open up a whole different level. And it's so much more than just the haircut or the color or the facial or the, massage or the injectables. It is such a relationship that they develop. And the service providers, the owners learn so much from all the people that they interact with as well. So having these continued conversations in the business space it's nothing more than providing so much more value.
Totally. That's a really good point. I love that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I would certainly I hope that our listeners have taken good pieces from our conversation, Carl. I know I have. It's always a pleasure to spend time with you. My hope is, and my encouragement is for our listeners to take some action. We're going to share with you a couple of thoughts and questions that Carl has. We'll share them with you in the show notes. And I would just encourage you, if you're an owner or a manager, have these conversations with your team. There's nothing more important than understanding your team's thoughts, feelings, ideas around money. That relationship can develop and open up so many new things when you understand their standpoint of money. And do the same with your clients and encourage them. Again, the more we have conversations about money, the more our worlds open up. So
For sure. That's beautifully said. Thank you. What a great conversation.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Carl, for taking the time to be here with us today. I so appreciate you.
You bet, Kristen. Thank you.